Hey guys, it's Bound here, and today I'm gonna go over the Regulation D meta so far and everything in it. Um, so this season started, Season 8 is the first season of Regulation D, and it started the 1st of July. And yeah, it's been pretty interesting so far, but it's also been a mess, absolutely crazy, because there is just so much Pokemon to talk about that have been introduced. So I'm gonna go over that right now. So obviously, we go on Cerebian.net, it talks about the Regulation D stuff. We have the banned Pokemon, obviously all the mythicals for right now, and some legendaries from other games. But these are the newly usable Pokemon right here. And honestly, what I'm gonna say right now is that a lot of these Pokemon get invalidated by two of these Pokemon, or two or three. So you have Urshifu Rapid Strike right here. You have Ursaluna, and I guess I guess History and Guja is also really good, but and then there's Landorus. So a lot of Pokemon, Cresselia and Heatran as well, are pretty big threats, but they're not as like dominating as the others, I feel like. So I'm gonna talk about that, but there's so much power in the meta right now, and I guess coming from Regulation C, there has been a few answers to it coming in Regulation D, but a lot of it is still left unanswered, like Champao, Fluttermane, still really easy Pokemon to ladder with. They have very few switch-ins, and Regulation D still has that issue, unfortunately. So I'm going to talk about the most used Pokemon and how to deal with them and what's going on with the meta in general. Alright, so here we have the Sword and Shield, or not the Sword and Shield, the Scarlet and Violet PokeDB website. So this is basically a similar thing to Pokemon Home, except it's just on the internet, and it basically shows the same usage data, but it's just in Japanese, just because the player base of singles is mainly Japanese, so that's just how it is. But I'm just gonna go over it, translate everything for you, because I know what this stuff is. But yeah, Fluttermane is the number one used Pokemon right now, and the main reasoning behind that is because it's one of the fastest Pokemon in the metagame, and it has barely any switch-ins, pretty much, and it has so much move variety that you have to like deal with it. Like it's so hard to deal with because it has ways to lower the opponent's attack and special attack. It has ways to set up. It has ways to boost its speed even further with booster energy. It has the strongest special attack in the game that's consistent, Moonblast. So it's just hard to deal with. And its typing has 3 immunities in itself: normal, fighting, and dragon. So that makes it really compatible with certain Pokemon, and it just makes it like compatible with almost every team because everyone's using it, right? So Moonblast, Shadow Ball, Mystical Fire, Calm Mind, Side Shock, Pain Split, Substitute, Charm, Terra Blast. Power Gem are the most common moves, but it's mainly Moonblast and Shadow Ball that are like on most movesets. And then Calm Mind is really common with like booster energy sets, which have been skyrocketing in popularity. Like almost 60% of Fluttermanes are running booster energy, which is absolutely crazy. It used to be back in like season 3 and 4, it was actually more Specs Fluttermane, I believe, which is absolutely like an amazing shift because there's so much speed in the meta now with Chanpao, Iron Bundle, and stuff in the game. So yeah, that also kind of makes another problem in the meta, right, with the speed problem. But yeah, and then Terra Fairy is the most popular, but just because it makes Moonblast really strong, like stronger than it was. And Terra Water has been rising recently, along with Ground, because of Heatrans mainly, which I guess makes sense because I mean, like, you can kind of just lock up the game instantly with one of these Terras, because Fluttermane, if you can't like wall it, it's gonna just outspeed and kill everything. So definitely a good idea what people were doing. And yeah, it's just really good Pokemon. That's why it's on a lot of top teams. And yeah, there's not really any like guaranteed counterplay against this Pokemon because it has tools for every situation. So you're kind of forced to get lucky, I guess, when dealing with certain movesets. Like, for example, against Specs, you can kind of try to play around its like the fact that it's locked into something. And for the boost energy ones, you can try to play around its like limited power because they don't invest in like offense, they invest in like bulk a lot of the time. So you can try to deal with that, but it's just hard. And that's why this Pokemon is the most used right now. So we're gonna get into the next most used Pokemon, which is Urshifu Water. Now, the Urshifu Water invalidates a lot of the meta just like Flutter Mane does because it has Surging Strikes. And basically, this invalidates the fact that you can't... This basically makes it so that you can't really set up defensively versus this Pokemon because it doesn't matter. And it also, this Pokemon will also force a lot of terrestrialization because of that. And also, Water Fighting is just really good offensively. So you have Surging Strikes, Close Combat, Aqua Jet, and Swords Dance was actually a buff in Generation 9 for Urshifu, which actually has been helping it quite a bit, like break through certain ponds. And that's also the issue. Like, all the top Pokemon can break through any defensive counterplay, which is a bit really problematic, especially if you're trying to ladder, because you think you might have the counterplay and it's just not there. Like, I was using a Water Absorb Cloudsire, and like Urshifu could just beat that because people have been running Substitute, Bulk Up, Substitute Swords Dance, or at least that's what I've been running into, and there's nothing Cloudsire can really do about it. So it's like, you kind of have to get, again, you kind of have to get lucky that you run into like the set that doesn't destroy you, but that's just the kind of thing about ranked battles. You're going to get countered. That's just how it goes. You will always get countered. That's just the nature of the game. So you want to have a Pokemon that can just deal with Urshifu. Outspeeding it is really good, but then it can have a Scarf, 22%. You're going to run into a Scarf, which is unfortunate. So if you're trying to use like a Pokemon like Thundurus or something, like Scarf Surging Strike is probably just going to KO. I don't know. This Pokemon's really strong. Like, guaranteed crit move, 130 attack, and yeah, it's just crazy. So, Punching Glove is actually the most common item. Almost half Urshifus are running Punching Glove, so that means that you can't use Rocky Helmet to counter Urshifu, and it gets a punch boost on Surging Strikes, Close Combat, Ice Punch, Thunder Punch. Like, it's just like a really no drawback item that Urshifu can run, so that's why it's the most used right there. And it kind of removes the main counterplay Urshifu had in the previous generation, which is kind of unfortunate because this Pokemon is just hard to deal with already. And also the thing with last generation Urshifu is that Dynamax existed, so it was easier to deal with Surging Strikes back then, and you could also max guard on Urshifu, and Unseen Fist wouldn't work. But also the thing with Punching Glove this generation is that Unseen Fist actually deactivates when you're using this item. I don't know how that works, but I guess that's cool. But that actually doesn't really matter too much, actually, because the flow of the game doesn't really work like that. You can't be like, oh, he's Punching Glove, I can use Protect now. Okay, that's not really how it works. But because it's hard. First of all, you would have to detect the Punching Glove, which is not too hard, or just not that easy to do unless you have a Rocky Helmet on a Pokemon. And then, yeah, it's just not feasible to try and gamble using Protect against an Urshifu. So, yeah, you can't use Protect, you can't set up defensively, and you have to be careful of getting outsped by a Scarf. So it's just really hard to deal with right now, as yeah, it just has too much power and speed. So 97 speed isn't too bad, but when you get the Choice Scarf, that's when it like becomes really hard to deal with. And then on top of like being able to run like an Adamant nature with the Choice Scarf with that speed tier is like really threatening as well, because it's just gonna make its moves even stronger. And then it gets U-turn as well, so U-turn makes it harder to deal with because it gets to be able to pivot into more other powerful Pokemon in the metagame, which is crazy. And then most use Terra as water because Surging Strike is just really strong, and you're just gonna be able to break through any Pokemon. You're just gonna be able to break through it. Yeah, because you can, like, since it doesn't matter if the opponent sets up defensively, you can just get the power out as much as possible, and there's nothing the opponent can do about it except have it resist. That's literally it. So Water Terra is probably gonna go up a lot in usage, in order to deal with this Pokemon, because it's just that centralizing in the meta right at the moment. And then another meta thing we've been seeing at the beginning of the Series 8 or the Season 8 meta is that the anti-Zapdos attack. So Zapdos used to be almost top 5 at the beginning of the season, and now it's number 10. So we'll just jump to Zapdos right now, because so at the beginning, okay, so Zapdos at the beginning would run mostly like Terra Water defensively, because it would like deal with all the Urshifu's options, and this like the main thing was like to use this to counter Urshifu because it was too strong. So they would run Rocky Helmet with HP and defense, right? Well, that didn't work anymore because the Urshifu started running Punching Glove to respond to Zapdos, and then the Urshifu also started running Electric Terra, so that they can't get paralyzed with Thunder Wave. They just resist Zapdos options, and then they can just like Swords Dance and break through Zapdos. So it's like so Urshifu is just gonna be really hard to deal with, and you have to have a Pokemon that can not only outspeed it, but can also deal with its like just game-ending options. Like if you guess this thing, if you guess the moveset wrong and you lose a Pokemon, you're losing the game pretty much. And that's the same thing with like all these Pokemon, like the top 3 right now. So Fluttermane, Urshifu, Chien-Pao, those are the 3 Pokemon to beat, and they have very similar qualities about them. They hit really hard, they're fast, and they have secondary effects that are really annoying to deal with. Like Chien-Pao, I'd argue Chien-Pao is better in this regulation than it was the last one, because more Pokemon got added into this regulation that just give Chien-Pao more value, like all the flying types that got added. So yeah, it's just crazy. So they're still running Electric Terra, they're still running all these like crazy Terras to just counter any hopes of like dealing with this Pokemon. And then yeah, so that's the biggest problem, because when you combine this Pokemon with Terra, and like all these Terras, like 6 and up, are like seen very commonly, even Fire Terra, like Fire, Ice, Grass, Dark. Like you have to be conscious of every single one of these Terras, and they can just end the game if you guess wrong. So the fact that these top Pokemon can abuse Terra and end games really fast is the hardest thing about this metagame so far, in my opinion. And I'm going to be working at a team that can mitigate the guessing game, but it's going to be pretty interesting. It's definitely going to take a while. I've only played 40 games this season, and I'm like I played like 38 games. I'm like 25-13, like 1700 rating or something like that. But yeah, I'm gonna have to figure. I'm not gonna go in again until I build another team, because I don't want to deal with. I just want to mitigate the guessing game against Chien-Pao and Urshifu and Fluttermane. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, most Chien-Paos out there are going to be Focus Sash. Some are going to be Choice Bands, so that you can't really. And that's the thing, like you can't switch into this Pokemon, and then Choice Band kind of solidifies that, so you can't switch in. And if you're trying to stay in and kill it, you're probably going to be slower, so you have to deal with this Ice Crash flinch chance, which is 30%. And if you get that 30%, you lost. So yeah, if you get that 30%, you lost the game, because Chien-Pao is just going to outspeed and one-hit KO everything else. Because yeah, it pretty much invalidates a lot of the meta right now. It forces a lot of terrestrialization, and it has a one-hit KO move that people run some of the times, like 5% running Sheer Cold. So even if you do have defensive counterplay, it doesn't even matter, because they can just Sheer Cold, right? So yeah, that's also another problem with this Pokemon. It just has answers to every situation. It has priority moves, so even if you do outspeed it, you have to be careful of its high power revenge capabilities, which is unfortunate. That's actually really annoying to deal with, especially since there are both stab moves as well, so they're just gonna get even more stronger. And yeah, so like Chien-Pao Sucker Punch is just a straight up strongest priority move to ever exist. Like, that's just crazy. Again, you can play around it with like substitute, but you're just not, I don't know, like, you have to, like, Chien-Pao is just too much. And then also, like, even if you do have substitute, then if it has Ice Shard and then it hits you enough, like, you might not even get to be able to pull that off. So it's like, the guessing game with this Pokemon is insane. So yeah, I say the best way, like, one example that was really cool was Season 6. So let's go back to Season 6, and this was a Regulation C, but that's still when Chien-Pao was everywhere. This team right here. So this team used a Choice Banded Ceruledge with Weak Arbor, right? And the goal of this was to Terrasilize into Fairy on Chien-Pao's Crunch or Dark move, and then just recover all that health back with the Bitter Blade. And then the next turn, since Chien-Pao hit Ceruledge, it would be faster the next turn. So Chien-Pao is forced to use the priority move or switch out into a bedded Bitter Blade, which is very hard to switch into. So this team kind of prioritized outspeeding Chien-Pao and reducing the game of luck that Regulation C kind of brought up upon the meta because of Chien-Pao, Chi-Yu being everywhere and flitching, and one-hit KO moves being really common because there weren't enough flying Pokemon. So he had 2 flying Pokemon to reduce the one-hit KOs. He had 4 Pokemon that had the capabilities of outspeeding Chien-Pao, which is really good. And then he had just high firepower and a substitute as well to mitigate the possibility of Sucker Punch and stuff like that. So really, really cool ideas coming from this player right here. So yeah, back to the usage stats. Let's just go back here. And yeah, so really, really cool stuff right there. Because as you can see, like if you go to Season 5, for example, which is the beginning of Regulation C, Chien-Pao was pretty much on every top team because players really didn't know how to deal with it because it had so much options, right? Like, that's why it was getting to the top so often. Like, look at this. Like, every single 70% of these top teams have Chien-Pao on them. Like, Chien-Pao, Chien-Pao. Like, it's actually crazy. And then Season 7, which was the end of Regulation C, Chien-Pao, Chien-Pao, Chien-Pao. Like, it's just everywhere. Almost. So, okay, well, Season 7 had a little bit less Chien-Pao because people were figuring it out. And that's why there's so much Dragonite right now as well, because Extreme Speed was a really valuable option in being able to outspeed it and minimize the luck game. So, yeah. And then if you go Season 8, okay, well, the final results haven't been there yet, but yeah, Chien-Pao is still really like a force to be reckoned with, honestly. So we're going to talk about Dragonite next. Now, Dragonite used to be the #1 Pokemon for almost the entire duration of the game so far, which is absolutely crazy because it's just that good. Like, it's just that good because Extreme Speed being the fastest option in the game, no matter what, Earthquake, just complementing it well, and then like being able to set up Dragon Dances easier with multi-scale, being able to use Encore on unsuspecting opponents, being able to Roost to recover. Like, it just has so many options. Dragon Tail as well. You can have so many. This Pokemon has so many builds that just work well in the metagame right now. And that's also another thing. If you guess wrong, you're in a bad spot. I wouldn't say you lose automatically if you guess wrong, because Dragonite isn't as like game ending as Flutter Mane or Chien-Pao or Urshifu, but it can put you in a really bad spot if you guess wrong, because like it has coverage for everything. It has like the utility for everything. So yeah, and then normal Terra has just skyrocketed in usage right now because you need that extreme speed. You need that strong extreme speed to be able to like kill the faster threats right now, or just like finish them off. And yeah, items, Rocky helmet, for the Urge food mainly. If you have to hope they're not running Punching Glove though, or Ice Punch, because that could be really bad. Heavy duty boots for like cycle teams. What's this? Choice band, leftovers. Like, it just has so many good options. You can run offensive or defensive. You can run. I've seen special attacking Dragonites. I've seen like a lot of stuff, especially with like the Zapdos meta. But Zapdos is dropping in usage, so that might go away. Who knows? But being able to, like, it's crazy because you fear this thing setting up and you don't even want to set up against it because Encore exists. So it's like, that's why it's so polarizing right now. And also the meta is pretty crazy right now because, like, in terms of setting up, because a lot of Pokemon get Encore right now. Like in Generation 9, Encore became a TM, so a certain Pokemon you have to be careful clicking buttons against because you can't, like, because Encore exists. Like Iron Bundle, you have to be scared of clicking buttons regardless, as long as it's on the team, because Iron Bundle can just come in and then you're slower, like, automatically. So, and then Encore's kind of come out and you're stuck. So, like, this move has just changed the game pretty much. Like, it's insane. And then, yeah, Dragonite being able to abuse that is just insane. So, yeah, Dragonite, you really have to, like, it's just insane. There's so many good threats right now, like, but even then, I would argue that, like, top 1 to like any of these Pokemon are good. Like, you can utilize them, but it's just that you have to be really careful of the top 5 Pokemon because they invalidate so much of the game, of the flow of the game. So you need to build all these Pokemon that you want to, if you want to use any of these Pokemon, you need to be able to build against these Pokemon because they're going to be on majority, if not all, of the opposing teams that you fight. You're going to see at least one of these Pokemon, right? So yeah. Heatran is the number 5 used Pokemon. It used to be number 3 at the beginning, I think. But obviously with Dragonite and other things like Urshifu in the meta, forcing it to Terra and things like that, it dropped a little bit, but it's still really good at doing its role. I wouldn't say it's a good versatile Pokemon because it can, like, be vulnerable to a lot of things, but it's good at doing its role as long as the move hits, which is a Magma Storm, right? Trapping the opponent and doing residual damage. Now, the thing about Heatran is that it had a similar role to Iron Moth, which Iron Moth in the past was able to be that 4 times resist to the Moonblast that just killed everything else. So when you have a Heatran that can not only resist the Moonblast 4 times, but then can also threaten a one-hit KO on Flutterman and forces a Terra, that's also a huge thing because Flutterman is the number 1 used Pokemon in the metagame. So it's gonna make other Pokemon that counter Flutterman rise in usage, like Heatran. But the Fluttermans have been going Terra Water and Terra Ground, so the Heatrans aren't as much of a problem to it. So that's like a crazy thing. Like, that's like the reason why Fluttermane is going to be number 1 for a while, because it can just adapt to any anti-meta stuff that comes its way. So that's gonna be pretty crazy to deal with now. Now that I'm saying that, and it's going to be Water, Ground, or Fairy, maybe you can devise something that can deal with any kind of those Terras. So we'll see what happens. But Heatran, yeah, its main role is to just trap and be annoying, like Magma Storm being like the main culprit, and then it has like Star Breaking sets with Taunt, Substitute, Protect, things like that. That's what I've mainly seen from my opponents that use Heatran. Wow, but actually the most used item is Assault Vest, so just 4 attacks Assault Vest. If Assault, if I was running this, I wouldn't run Magma Storm because I don't like missing moves. I would run in Magma Storm on defensive set. But anyway, yeah, Assault Vest seems really interesting because again, Flutter Mane is just that strong right now, and also Heavy Slam. It does exist, so you can threaten a one-hit KO on Flutter Mane if it doesn't Terra. I think it does one-hit KO, but I'm not exactly sure. I know Flutter Mane's really light because it's a fairy and stuff like that. I do know that Magnazone's Heavy Slam one-hit KO to KO's Flutter Mane like really significantly, like 160%, which is crazy. So I'm sure Heatran's Heavy Slam will do the same thing. So yeah, Heavy Slam is like tech literally exists for Flutter Mane. Like Flutter Mane is just that strong right now that you need that stuff for it. And then Terra Grass is the most common because it flips a lot of the weaknesses, and then it turns and then one of its weaknesses is turned into immunity. So fire, still can't hit it with the fire move even though it's a grass type. So you got to be careful about that. And then yeah, it's just really annoying to deal with if you don't have the counterplay. So yeah. Okay, next Pokemon we're going to talk about is Landorus Therian, which obviously is going to be a really strong Pokemon, like in no matter what the generation is, because Intimidate, you got wide move pool variety, U-turn, Earthquake, Stealth Rock, bulk up sets, or even like destroying things like sub bulk up. Smackdown Earthquake is really annoying to deal with. Scarf is really annoying to deal with because, like, I think the biggest thing about Landorus T that makes it so good is that, like, it's hard to, you can't, the moveset can counter so many things. Like, if you have something out and it has, like, that one item, it's gonna have that one item that destroys you. Like, you can't deal with every Landorus T with one Pokemon unless it's, like, Earthworm or something. Like, Earthworm may be able to do it. Or, like, I don't know what else, like, deals with every set possible. But you, like, I don't know, that's why it's so good, because it has like answers for every Pokemon if you have the right Terra or just right item or right move or whatever. So yeah, really strong Pokemon. Not really a way to, I don't have any ways to counter it yet, so I can't say anything right now, but maybe I'll update in the future. But Goldengo, still a really strong Pokemon. Deals with a lot of the nonsense status in the game. Covert Cloak is probably the most common, I would guess. Oh, it's actually Specs, but I think Covert Cloak is better because there's still a sharp usage of Garganacl. Like, Garganacl is still like, it looks like it's not used that much because it's down here, but when you look at the top ladder, it's actually everywhere because this thing can win very easily if you don't have any counterplay. So that's why Cloak on this is just really good, because it stops what, like, that's why this thing like wins, like has top placement so much, is because like it's just that good. It can abuse, Salt Cure, it can stall really well, and yeah, so that's another thing. Like Cloak, this Pokemon just forces a lot of Covert Cloaks and substitutes. So pretty much every team I build either has one of those elements in it, because it doesn't just, that means it won't automatically lose to this Pokemon pretty much. So yeah, this is an example of a meta defining Pokemon right here. Even though it's not like top used, it's still meta defining for sure, and you always need to be ready for it when it comes out. Now back to this. I'm gonna go a little bit faster through the Pokemon because I want to get through some of them and talk about them. But Iron Bundle is the next one because it's really strong and it's fast. So unresisted stab combination combined with a Pokemon that's faster than Flutter Mane, and it's gonna see some usage for sure. And it's faster than Champao as well. So yeah, that's really good. And then Booster Energy, it can run Booster Energy as well, so that makes it the fastest Pokemon in the game. Outside from like a Choice Scarf, Dragapult, which is barely seen, obviously. So Yeah, it's just really good. Tinglu, it actually used to be down here, like number 14 or something like that at the beginning. But Tinglu is just really good hazard setter. It chips a lot of the opposing team down before you can even do it. They even can do anything. Like Stealth Rock, Whirlwind, and Ruination, just kind of an annoying combination to deal with because there's nothing you can do to punish Tinglu for using Ruination. It's just a free move to click. The only thing you can really do is Encore it or trick a choice item onto it as it's using it. But yeah, it's just really annoying. And that's why it's so common, because it's annoying. So we already talked about Zapdos. I guess I'll show Tinglu. It's pretty much fulfill the same role that it did in the past. Like, you still see these 4 moves very commonly. Ruination, Earthquake, Stealth Rock, and Whirlwind. And then Fairy Terra, Poison Terra to get rid of those weaknesses. And yeah, like, not really much new stuff here. Yeah, let's just go back here. And yeah, so we have Thundurus Therian, which is actually an interesting Pokemon because it destroyed a lot of the early week or early metagame Urshifu Zapdos cores that were like everywhere at the beginning. And now that this thing has become almost a top 10 Pokemon, that core just faded away a lot. It's still there, but that's why it's still used a lot. And then it's also a really good wall breaker because it can use Nasty Plot or Choice Specs and have really strong moves. And then next one is Cresselia, which can be really annoying if you don't have any counterplay. And like Pokemon like this is why Encore like still needs to be used, because if you don't like control it, it's just gonna, yeah, if you don't have any control, it's just gonna get out of control very fast because Store Power, Moonblast can kind of just hit everything for good damage. And yeah, so the main thing, so let's click on it. So the main thing that it runs is like Moonlight, Calm Mind are the two most common, and then you have Moonblast and Store Power. So these 4 moves are just crazy. You need to have either Taunt or Encore to deal with this Pokemon. And even then, like, if you don't, it's just gonna outbulk your moves and just set up and win the game. Because you can't, like, try and flinch it either, because it's gonna have a Cobra Cloak most of the time. So it's like, that's actually good that this thing runs Cobra Cloak, because that's gonna make Garganacl less of a threat. It's gonna make other things just like less of a threat, but that means it's just gonna be annoying to deal with as a whole. So there's also a lot of Rocky Helmet, and the reason why there's a lot of Electric Terra ones is because when you have an Electric Terra with Levitate, it makes it so that you have no weaknesses, and then that just adds to consistency of setting up and winning the game. So yeah, that's like really crazy to deal with right there. So yeah, you need to trick a choice scarf on, like a trick a choice item onto it, or have Taunt and Encore, which, like, that's literally the only way to deal with it, at least aside from just like having a Swords Dance or something like that. So yeah, really annoying Pokemon if you don't have anything to deal with it, because it'll just stall. It'll either just stall or just like start up and win. Hisuian Gush is an interesting one because it has a lot of utility and interesting stuff. Like, that's why you see all these moves. Like the most common move is only 52% of Gudras. Like, that's actually pretty cool about this Pokemon. So you get to see a lot of different tech and options with this Pokemon, like Flash Cannon, Draco Meteor. Okay, those are like going to be the most common, of course, because they're the special stab moves that hit the hardest. And then you have Ice Beam for those Landorus Therians, you have Earthquake for the Heatrans, you have Heavy Slam to one-hit KO any Fluttermane, you have Acid Spray, you have Body Press. Like, there's so many interesting options that it gets because its move pool is so, like, wide that you get to see so many cool things with this Pokemon. I actually kind of want to use it at some point too, but I'm not sure what kind of set I would run because there's just so many options. Like, that's the cool thing about Hisuian Gush. You can really get creative with this Pokemon. But yeah, the main thing you'll be seeing is Assault Vest 63% of the time. But that doesn't mean it's very, like, that doesn't mean it's like you're going to be seeing the same thing with Assault Vest. That means you're going to be seeing any combination of these moves, except for like the Shelter, right? Because you can't run Shelter with Assault Vest. But like, it gets so many different attacks and so many different coverage, like you don't know what it's going to be running with the Assault Vest. So that's pretty interesting. Leftovers sets are usually run with Shelter or just like a defense boosting move. Like, it gets, the funny thing is that it actually gets Iron Defense, Shelter, and Acid Armor. So it's funny, just that even though they do the exact same thing, it's just funny. So yeah, Terra Flying and Fairy and Water are all defensive terrorists for this Pokemon, because they just want to stay out in the field as long as possible. And then the most usability, I'm pretty sure this is Sap Sipper. And then the second ability is Shell Armor, because you don't want to get crit by Urshifu Rapid Strike. And then the third ability is, I forgot the third ability, but you don't really need to care about that, I feel like. It's just mainly Sap Sipper and Shell Armor. And then, yeah, there's a lot of interesting, like the spread is actually pretty even, like, compared to a lot of other Pokemon. Because, yeah, it just has so many options, which is really cool. So next Pokemon is Ursaluna. Now this Pokemon is crazy. So this Pokemon basically has no switching except for like Corviknight and Earthworm. Like reliable switch-ins, I would say. Earthworm, yeah, Earthworm because of the ability to immunity to ground, and then Corviknight just because of the natural immunity. So, but even then, Ursaluna can just invest in speed, and then just outspeed and 2-hit KO those Pokemon. So it's like, if you're getting 2-hit KO'd when you're switching in, that's scary, even on a resistant Pokemon. So this Pokemon is pretty much impossible to switch into reliably, and that's why it's really that's why it's relatively common right now. So you have the most common ability with Guts, and you have Adamant being the most common. Obviously, gonna have that Flame Orb for Guts activation. And the unique thing about this is that when you're burned, you can't get yawned or poisoned or anything like that. So it's actually better to get burned than any other status condition on a Pokemon, because of it has less chip and just less impact on the battle. Unless you're, of course, a physical attack and you get burned, that's obviously bad. But overall, it's way better than like sleep or poison or paralysis, because those can be way more annoying to deal with and just make you lose the game even though you didn't even want to lose. So yeah. And then there's some Assault Vest ones, but yeah, it's just gonna mainly be Flame Orb. I actually did not expect Terra Normal to be the most common on it, and I guess it's just because you want Facade to hit as much as possible. Like, that's actually, oh my god, that's so nasty. Like, I'm actually curious on how much damage that would do to a Corviknight, but that's for another day. Like, and then you have Fairy, Ghost, Water, Defensive Terra is right here. But like a normal Terra Facade, ugh, that's disgusting, dude. That's gonna be really strong. But yeah, let's go back to the thing, and Dondozo, the next one. Obviously, Dondozo is always gonna be around because if it's unaware and when it KO moves, like being able to deal with a lot of setup in the game. Yawn as well. Like, Dondozo will always be able to stall out a lot of the metagame. And that's why it's going to be on a lot of teams, because it's just going to have that quality that people need to put on a team, right? So, yeah, you're just going to see leftovers. Rocky Helmet actually picked up a lot of usage over the recent days because of Urshifu mainly. Like, if it's not Punchy Glove, it's gonna get punished really hard. Now the thing is, yeah, leftovers used to be really like dominant as the item on Dondozo back in like past season, like season 7. If you click Dondozo and you see the item spread, like leftovers 77%. because that's also like that's all they were running basically, because they just needed that recovery over time. But in this meta, they're actually, I think it's actually like split really evenly between yeah, it's split pretty evenly between Leftovers and Rocky Hill, which is interesting. Fairy Terra and Grass Terra are the main ones you want to deal with, but I think Fairy Terra is the main one. Dondozo doesn't really Terra much though, because water is a really good defensive typing already. But yeah, if it needs to Terra, it will Terra. And then Mimikyu, still a really strong threat right now. Can't count it out. Urshifu Dark is a really strong Pokemon. A lot of them are running like Choice Band Wicked Blow, which is really hard to switch into, so you kind of need to just outspeed it. However, a lot of the top Pokemon like Fluttermane and Chien-Pao can just use fairy moves, like with Chien-Pao Fairy. Like Fairy Terra is really common, and Fluttermane, like Moonblast, can just outspeed and kill it. So that's why it's kind of lower on the list. Whereas Water Urshifu can deal with Chien-Pao better and force this Chien-Pao to terrestrialize, and the like the multi-hit of Surging Strikes can get through a Focus Sash Chien-Pao if it's like Terra Water Choice Scarf or something like that, and then also the multi-hit can get through a Fluttermane as well. So that's why the Urshifu Water is used a lot more than this one. It's just because of the multi-hit. Like multi-hits are just so much better and they're really important in the game right now. And also being able to punish Landorus more with that super effective Surging Strikes and break through the Intimidate that has been causing so much Pokemon, like which makes it be really good. So yeah. And then Chi-Yu, still really strong. All these Pokemon are very strong. I would consider them all strong, but Chi-Yu is still a really strong pick right now because it's really strong and fast. However, it does get outsped by a lot of the Pokemon, so that's why a majority of the Chi-Yus are running Choice Scarf. Let me just confirm that right now. Yeah, so the most used item is Choice Scarf. Choice Mix is actually not that far behind, but like when this Pokemon comes out, you still have to fear Scarf a lot of the time because that's just how it's mostly ran. So if you can catch your opponents trying to switch in to some Scarf damage and you blow it up with Specs, that could actually be pretty game-changing right there. And then, yeah, Greninja is actually an interesting one because I think the main thing people are using it for is like a lead and like a Toxic Spike Setter. So that's actually pretty high usage for just a Toxic Spike Setter, but I think people are running like Choice Scarf and Specs as well, so it's not just that role. So yeah, that's interesting. I feel like Greninja might have a lot of potential. We will see in the future, but yeah. Annihilate, Baxcalibur, like all these are just strong picks. Rotom Wash is a really good Pokemon. Garganacl, we talked about that earlier. Sneasler is really annoying Pokemon to deal with right now, actually. This Pokemon is, I don't know what they were thinking when they designed this Pokemon. It's actually it's honestly as dishonest as like these Pokemon, because it can just end the game. Like if you're not a Steel type, then you can just randomly lose to Dire Claw, and yeah, that's just how it works. Like you have to have a Goldango to completely wall it, but then it has Shadow Claw and stuff like that to coverage. So even then, you can't reliably wall it, and it's gonna force a lot of terrestrialization. So that's gonna be a problem right there. Dire Claw existing, it's just gonna make it when matchups shouldn't, which is something I really don't like about some of these Pokemon, is that they win matches they shouldn't win. So yeah, Slowking is an interesting one. Slowking and Clodsire are really good bulky poisons right now. You just have to be careful of a lot of the substitutes and anti-stall going around. All these are really good picks right now. So, but I'm gonna wrap it up there because this has been going on for a while. So I hope you all enjoyed this talk. I want to do more of these in the future. But yeah, I hope you all enjoy it, and I will be back with some more teams, some more ideas, and anything like that. So I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Peace.